What's up, Star Wars nerds, and welcome to another episode of Brett on Fett. On today's episode, the final member of Delta Squad has finally arrived for the Black Series, so I'll be conducting my in-hand review of Scorch. Also, we've got some recent pickups to share, including some exciting graded figures back from CAS. Let's get to it.
Did any of the villagers see the Zello?
Several. The locals have been detained and will be dealt with. However, one vessel escaped our assault. It was a military-class shuttle.
Find out who it was.
Yes, sir.
Welcome back to the channel. This is episode 52 of Brett on Fett. And before we get to my in-hand review of Scorch, I do have some other recent pickups of mine to share, including some other new figures from the Black Series, as well as some TVC figures I got back recently graded from CAS. So let's take a look. Alright, so first off, I got a couple of the publishing series, or comic book series as I prefer to call them, for the Black Series. Starting with this darkforcerising marajade. I am a huge fan of the Heir to the Empire trilogy by timothyzahn, and a big fan of the character of marajade as well. So I was very excited for this release. So let's take a look at this thing. Again, it's darkforcerising. These images from the comic book of that story. Great pictures on the packaging as always with these. Here's a look at the back. Got some information on the figure, since we can't actually see her. More amazing artwork on the top. Now with this latest wave, they've gone and put that plastic-free packaging label over the artwork. I thought that was a bad move. I was very disappointed to see that. They could have stuck that thing on the back of the box. Opening it up, you can see it's got a tab system now that pops out and can actually tuck into the art, which I like that. I think this was a good move because sometimes that Velcro would come unglued. But there's a look at the rendered image of the figure instead of a window for the figure itself. Very disappointing. I assume they didn't go with an open window like they did with the Bobafett in Disguise because of theft concerns. But man, I wish they just could have kept the plastic for these. They've kept the plastic bubble for the 40th anniversary. I wish they'd have gone a step further and just kept them for this comic book series. So I have taken the figure out, and let's take a quick look at her. She looks really good. I believe the body of this mold is a reuse from the old Jaina Solo figure. The head sculpt is amazing. She looks fantastic. The hair, the face, everything looks really good. She's got a really cool blaster and holster there, and a really good looking lightsaber. The articulation on the figure is pretty good. She's got that old school crunch joint, which I didn't know they had these on Black Series figures. I hadn't seen them before personally, but she's also got a traditional swivel crunch there at the mid torso. So articulation is, like I said, decent, and just a great looking figure. Now I mentioned Darkforcerising is the second book in a trilogy of timothyzahn novels. I already had this Heir to the Empire figure for Luke Skywalker. This is the first book of that trilogy, and so it makes me wonder what is going to be the release for the third book, which is called thelastcommand. So let me know in the comments what you think they might use for that third release. Could it be another reissue of Thrawn, or would they go with another main character from that novel? And the second publishing series figure I got in the mail recently is doctoraphra. I love this character. She's very intriguing. Really hoping to see her in live action someday. The artwork is fantastic. Hey look, there's Black Chrysanthemum making a cameo. There's a look at the back of the box. Little bit of artwork on the back. There's a side panel, more artwork on the top, and then again on the bottom they've stuck that plastic-free packaging label. Very unfortunate. There's the tab, really cool image of her shooting her blasters, a little write-up, and there's that ridiculous rendering image there that should have been a window in my opinion. But window issue aside, this is still overall a fantastic looking package. They always do a great job with the artwork on these. And let's take a look at the figure. She looks great. I believe the body is that same mold that was used for marajade, again taken from Jaina Solo. But the head sculpt looks great. I like her scarf a lot. There's that same crunch joint. She's got soft plastic for the cape. Her helmet does come off, but I much prefer it on. It's a very cool helmet with the goggles. The goggles are molded to the helmet. But man, she looks good. Great blaster. Just love the outfit. Overall, I think this is a great release for doctoraphra and far superior to her original Black Series figure. All right, for those of you that follow my channel closely, or maybe you've been following my Instagram, you may be already aware that a long time ago, I got my Razor Crest exclusive Grogu graded by AFA. My original plan was to send all 3 of the Razor Crest figures to AFA to be graded, but I decided to do one at a time, so I wasn't spending so much money at once, which was a bad idea. And so I got the Grogu back from AFA and it graded a 90, which I was very happy with. But when I went to send the loose Mando to AFA for grading, I found out that AFA was no longer doing loose grading for modern figures. And so I had to send the Mando to CAS. I got a 95 grade from CAS, which I was very happy with, but possibly even more happy with the display. This is just a really awesome looking display for that figure and the accessories. So I had an AFA 90 carded Grogu and a CAS 95 loose Mando for the Razor Crest, but I still had not sent off my off-world Jawa Elder from the Razor Crest. But recently CAS had a promotion going where they were doing 30-day turnaround grading with no extra fees. So it was basically a free expedited grading service. And I had to take advantage of that, so I thought this was a good chance to finally send in my Jawa Elder figure. So I sent it in along with another figure, and I mailed it on February 8th. CAS received it on February 13th. They graded it on March 1st, and it got back to my doorstep on March 8th. That is an amazing turnaround, and what's even better is I got an awesome score on this thing. I got a overall score of 95, technically 95.7, with sub-scores of straight 95s for the card back, the bubble, and the figure. Could not be happier. This is my first 95 for a carded figure. And my only regret is not having sent the Grogu to CAS as well. I would have been much happier if I had all 3 graded from the same company. And plus, I think AFA tends to grade a little bit harder than CAS, so I think it's possible my Grogu could have gotten a 95. And how cool would that have been to have straight 95s from CAS for all 3 Razor Crest figures? And along with that Jawa Elder figure, I also sent the Droids Bobafett figure into CAS for that 30-day turnaround promotion. This is one of my favorite TVC releases. I love this figure so much. I love the card back artwork. And I sent it in. It came back with a 90, so I was very happy with that. The sub scores was actually got a 95 for the card back, which is very tough to do, but unfortunately got only a 90 for the bubble and a 90 for the figure. So I missed the 95, but I'm not complaining. This is an awesome score. Very happy with this. And it's just a beautiful display piece. I love the way this card back looks in an acrylic case. So very happy with this one. All right, so way back in late 2021, Hasbro released the first of the Delta Squad Commandos, and that was Boss. And then moving into 2022, they eventually released the second one, that being Sev, followed by Fixer. And now finally, they've released the 4th and final member of the Delta Squad Commandos, that being Scorch. Now, if you're one of the few people that have followed my channel since the beginning, you may recall that my 3rd ever episode, episode 3, I did my first ever random figure spotlight, and that was on Scorch from the Saga collection. And it's a very cool figure. Scorch is my favorite of the Delta Squad Commandos. I'm not a huge fanboy of that whole storyline. I didn't really play the PC game back in the day, but I always did like the way Scorch looked. And I wasn't excited about the other Delta Squad Commandos that came out in Black Series. They put them out on that Hunter body from the Bad Batch, and I thought they just looked too skinny. Didn't think they looked bulky enough. Just didn't think they looked that great overall. So I actually never purchased any of the other Delta Squad members, but I knew when they got Scorch out that I would have to order him because he just was my favorite. And by the way, if you're not familiar with Scorch and like to know a little bit more about who he is and what he's all about, check out my episode 3 because I do go over that. All right, so let's check out the figure. All right, so first off, let's take a look at the packaging, and right off the bat, the first thing you notice is this is the plastic-free packaging style with no window, and that is an issue with this figure because all the previous members of Delta Squad they released came on that traditional Galaxy packaging with the plastic window. So it's very frustrating they decided to release Scorch without the plastic window. I realize this had been produced after they'd converted, but they should have made an exception for this one so they all look the same. I feel terrible for inbox collectors for Black Series that got the first 3 and want to have Scorch all lined up. That would drive me insane if I was going to be doing that. And again, just a terrible decision by Hasbro to not make all the packaging consistent for the 4 Delta Squad members. Now that being said, let's take a look at the packaging, and plastic-free packaging issue aside, they do an excellent job with these. I think they look fantastic. Of course, the mural artwork always looks really good. This is no exception here. He looks awesome. There's a look at the back where you got some information on Scorch and another image of the figure itself. And then on the side panel, they've got the scale of the figure shown, and there's the plastic-free packaging label. So pretty standard nowadays for these new PFP Galaxy boxes for Black Series. All right, so let's get this guy open. All right, so here is Scorch out of the box. Let's take a good look at him and the paint apps. And right off the bat, the visor is extremely cool. I love the paint used for his visor. I like the rough look of the white paint kind of bleeding on to the gray. The yellow and gray is an awesome combination. Now, that little dirt and grime they've put on there, if I'm being honest, I don't think it's great. I think it could have been a little bit better, but I think the rest of the paint apps do look pretty good. Looking at the back, you've got his backpack, which is a standout feature of this figure. Very awesome backpack there. And you can see the straps for his ammo shells there on the side, kind of a soft plastic, so that's pretty nice. I do notice that those ammo shells are a different color from what's shown on the box. There's a look at the back of the helmet, which has some nice paint apps, whereas sometimes they may skip on detailing that sort of thing on the back. Now the backpack has a T-plug there, which I think works better than the usual, it's like a square with like a half circle. I don't know what you call that shape, but I think the T actually works a little bit better for making it a little more snug. But overall, this figure does look pretty good. Now let's take a look at his blaster. This thing I think is supposed to be an anti-armor blaster, heavy duty thing. I think it launches kind of like explosive, kind of like a grenade launcher if I'm not mistaken. But a pretty cool looking blaster, and let's see how well he fits in his hand. Fits good. He's got kind of a trigger finger there, so that's all good. And then you can have his other hand grab the base of the gun. Yep, that fits nicely. All right, so pretty happy with that. So let's take the gun out and take a look at the articulation of the figure. At the head, you've got a ball connection there, so plenty of swivel room there. That's fine. His pauldrons are loose enough to flap around and give you plenty of room to move his arm, which has a ball hinge joint there, so I can get his arm up pretty high. And let's take a look at the elbow, which also has a ball hinge joint, so plenty of articulation there. And let's take a look at the wrist. The wrist has a ball hinge joint as well, so you can swivel it around and then bend it inwards. You can't move it outwards though, because of that, I guess because of that armor plating there. but that's fine, and the arm articulation is very good, pretty standard for these new Black Series figures. Now looking at the right hand wrist, you'll see that the hinge is actually in a different direction from the left wrist, and that is so you can change like the angle of his gun, and that's pretty standard for trooper figures these days. And moving over to the legs articulation, you've got the barbell style hips there, so plenty range of motion there, and of course you can twist the thighs. And then at the knees you've got a ball hinge, and it can go 90 degrees, so that's good. And of course the ball hinge will allow you to rotate the lower leg, so that's good. But at the ankles, unfortunately, it's just a hinge. It's not really a ball hinge. You can't rotate. There's not rocker ankles at all. You can just rotate them up and down, so not great at the ankles. And taking a look at the torso, you do have a swivel crunch there. Got plenty of movement up and down and then side to side, so that's good. All right, so now that we've checked out how the figure looks and articulates, let's see how well he does with getting him in various poses. So one of the first things I like to do with figures out of the box is make sure they can be posed in the same pose as shown on the box itself, and as you can see, he does that nicely. No problems whatsoever getting him in the pose that is shown on the box. Here is another standing action pose looking pretty cool. And here is a kneeling action pose, which you can also get him in with relative ease. And for fun, I've brought in that old Scorch figure from the Saga collection just to compare the two. And I gotta say, with the exception of the weathering look and the metallic paint on the Black Series visor, I think the colors on the paint apps for the Saga collection might be a little bit better than the Black Series in my opinion, but it's pretty close. And given that this is such an older figure, I'm sure the articulation on this new Black Series version is way better. And lastly, I just want to say with the use of that hunter mold for the body, I still think this figure is a little on the skinny side for these Delta Commandos. I would have preferred him still be bulkier looking, but that being said, overall I still think he looks very good, and I think that bulky backpack also helps offset the issue with him being too skinny. And also with this color scheme, I think Scorch looks the best of the Delta Squad Commando releases. But just keep in mind, if you're going to own all four, if you are an inbox collector, the boxes will not match with Scorch. Alright, so that's going to do it for this episode of Brett on Fett. Let me know in the comments what you think about Scorch and how does he compare to the rest of the Delta Squad Commandos for the Black Series. Thanks for watching this video. Thank you to my subscribers. Don't forget you can also follow me on Instagram and on Twitter. Take care, and we'll see you next time.